Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Reena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
All right, so welcome back. We are talking today about a subject matter that we've referenced, I believe, 3 or 4 times in all of our previous episodes. So I'm excited to dive into more detail today with personalities, specifically related to the team. So we've kind of referenced it as we've talked through several episodes on team members. So I want to dive into some of the details of that today and give some good feedback on it.
Thanks for clarifying, because I thought you were going to be like, Kuba, you got a personality problem. We're about to dissect it live.
In public forum.
Yes, good. Keep it on the staff. Good idea. I'm on board.
So we did personality testing on your team, years ago, and then we've implemented it on multiple levels through the years. And I know you said in one of our episodes that this was kind of a moment for you. You had dismissed personalities for the longest time, and then all of a sudden it kind of hit, and you realized the impact of that. Do you happen to remember that moment when it hit, or what made you kind of change your mind on personalities?
So there's a couple of things. One, and I believe you've kind of said this in our multiple conversations about how a lot of people don't look at personalities, especially when hiring. And my thought to that is that's how I used to think as well, because it didn't matter what your personality is. The job is you've got to answer the phone, you've got to schedule, you've got to collect payments, and you've got to bill. So you could be happy about it, you could be chipper and perky, or you could be, stoic. It doesn't really matter. That's the job. And I'm looking for the right person that can meet my hours and the pay expectation and all of that. And so now you want me to throw in their personality? Like, that doesn't really make sense. Yeah, great. That'd be nice. And also I was thinking about personalities as like, do I like the person or not? Do I bond and gel well with the person, right? So that's to me was my extent of knowledge of personality and temperaments and things like that. And I think when you and I first started working together, the comment I still remember having and saying to you was, my team's okay. Everything's fine. It's good. But I don't really want good. I want better. I want amazing. I want excellent. And I just don't feel at that time that my staff had any real respect for me. It was almost like anything I said was kind of a suggestion, but I wasn't really the boss. And, part of that goes back to my personality, to being a conflict avoider and
Right.
be the peacekeeper and the people pleaser. So they were reading what I was putting out there, and I didn't realize that's what I was putting out there. So I think, for me, it was this kind of just like, meh, the office is just meh. And you came in and you observed for 2 hours and you pegged each person exactly. I'm like, how can she know everybody in 2 hours? And what you had identified for me that I had completely missed was I had hired an office of the same personality type. And so it was all people who were very laid back and very chill and all go with the flow, which again, when I say it, I think, well, isn't that what you want? You don't want a drama queen but I can't have an office full of laid back people because then nothing was getting done.
Right.
And nobody was super passionate or super motivated to get something done. I mean, they'd do anything I asked them to do, but I had to ask and I had to rally and I had to pep. And that was just getting exhausting. And it's not that they didn't have respect for me, which maybe they didn't, I don't know. But that was what I was perceiving. But it was just, they were like, whatever. Okay. Yeah. You want me to scale? I'll scale. You want me to show up today? I'll show up today. But there was no like, hey, let's do this. Let's go. Let's whatever. So I realized that I had been hiring people because I didn't want to be bullied in my own office. Mm-hmm. And because I'm a people pleaser, I knew somebody who came in with a strong personality, I probably would be cowering to that person. And I was like, yeah, I don't want that. And I don't want somebody with lots of experience, because then they're going to come in and say, I know this. And I didn't know that much. It was 3 or 4 years into my own practice. So I knew the dentistry, but the whole practice management side of it was still, this big guessing game and doing the best I could. So I kept hiring people without realizing it, people that didn't intimidate me. And they seemed like they would be like, we would get along well. Yeah. But when I had 3 of my 5 team were very calm.
Yeah.
And then you had me on top of it who was trying not to make anybody mad. It was just this disaster. And so I think that was probably my main light bulb moment to go, oh,
yeah.
So I do need to figure out these personalities. And not that I have to change my own personality,
right.
but I've got to figure out how I can use my strengths with their strengths and make that work. And so that had never seemed like a worthwhile investment of time. Because again, it was, well, we just have to get this done.
Right.
I've got to get a chart note done. I've got to get sterile done. I've got to get billing done. I just need a body who's going to listen and want to get it done. Mm-hmm. And so the whole matching of the personalities just not even wasn't on my radar, but just almost seemed kind of dumb.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that, because I was viewing personalities very much like, are we going to get along and be harmony? I didn't want a drama queen coming in.
Right.
And that's not at all what the personality is about. So it just took me a while to get there.
Well, and it took a problem to essentially arise, and you couldn't really put your finger on what was going on with your team. You just knew you were dissatisfied, or there wasn't anything great about them. And once it was explained through the lens of, you've got the same personality type in the majority of your team members, finally it connected with, were the X, Y, and Z of the job being done? Yes. But all with the same low-key performance and nobody really driving the office to a higher level. And you are definitely a pusher to the next level. You're not going to be one of these doctors that's just kind of good with status quo until retirement. You're more of a pusher, and you had nobody on the team that was pushing the whole team to greatness. It kind of all fell on your shoulders.
It fell on me, and it fell on my office manager, who was the one other person, which then made her cranky as anything, because she was the only one trying to rally this group all the time, and she was just worn out and burnt out. And it does, looking back on it, it's like, I totally see why you were burnt out. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't have the right group. So to go and say then these people were invaluable on the team, not at all, but it just made us rethink and shift and go, okay, well, if you are going to be my quiet one, and therefore you don't really engage much with the rah-rah promoting of the office, or you're never the one who I really want answering the phone because you're just so blah on the phone, or whatever it is, but what are you good at?
Right.
And could we start tweaking and shifting tasks and things to, and sometimes that obviously, if you're a newer practice, you've got to wait maybe on that because you only have 2 employees. So you really kind of are stuck in that.
Right.
Was the tasks are there and you're the people. But as your team grows, and certainly if you're an office that you do have 4, 5, 6 people, then you can start going, okay, who would this task best suit?
Right.
Or certainly if I'm looking to hire now, and we have them take a personality test. And I tell them, I said, there's no right or wrong personality, because there's not. But it's, what can I expect you to do well in, such that when I start assigning tasks, I can start moving and shifting tasks accordingly, so that everybody can excel at what they're, can use their strengths to excel. Because you're always going to do better if you're doing something you're good at.
For sure. And I think we've used personalities a lot in hiring, because you have a bigger team now, and we know that we could shift if we end up interviewing somebody that we really like. Personality wasn't quite what we were expecting to fit the tasks that we had in mind for them, but we've got a big enough team now that we might be able to kind of shift some of the pieces around to make a job description that actually works for this person that we're interviewing. So I feel like we've used it a lot, even going back to when we first had your team full of very low-key personalities. We ended up, 2 actually ended up spinning off the team, and we were able to replace, and we were very diligent about hiring personalities that were different than what you had represented on the team. So I want to dive into the personality assessment that you and I reference a lot, because I think if we can use the names of it as we go throughout the podcast, it may be helpful. For those listening, it's called the Personality Plus Assessment, and it uses 4 kind of key categories of the personalities. It relates to the disc, so it goes hand in hand with the disc. I just remember these names. I can never remember the letters of the disc.
So clarify what disc is again, please.
Yes. So DISC is a personality assessment that focuses on these same 4 personality traits. It just uses letters, DISC, to describe the 4 personalities that we will reference in the podcast, which is Sanguine, Phlegmatic, Choleric, and Melancholy. And we'll dive into what each of those mean. But for those of you who are interested, there's a free assessment online. You just type in to your search engine Personality Plus Assessment, and you can take one. This is what we use in your office. It's just free online, quick 10 to 15 minute assessment, and dadgum near perfect on the results that we get. It tends to tie up with exactly what we expect the personalities to be. So quick summary. Choleric is your type A personality. It's the one that's super driven, very taskless oriented. We talk about this a lot on your team because we get a lot of choleric parents in your office, which are very direct in communication. They can be intimidating. When we go back to what you were talking about earlier with your team that you were dissatisfied with, you had no cholerics on your team because they are the ones that intimidated you in the interview process. So we're naturally intimidated by these people. They're very busy. They build their life kind of around being busy. Even if they're a stay-at-home mom, they have a very diligent task that they're trying to get done. So cholerics, type A, is the best way that we can use to describe them. Definitely intimidating, but they're very good at executing and getting a task list done. Then you've got your melancholy. Melancholy is your super detail person. So they can do a job perfectly, but it might take them 9 years to get that done because they are so detailed in everything that they do. So I always use the example of dominoes with melancholy. So when they are executing a plan, it's this long string of dominoes, and they've got every detail, and they've stacked those dominoes perfectly so that when they execute the plan, all the dominoes are knocked down, and it makes this beautiful design. That's a melancholy. So if you take one domino out of their plan, in their mind, the whole plan crumbles because it won't work without that one domino. So they can be adverse to change. They're just a slower processor, but incredibly detailed in their planning. Then we've got, and by the way, melancholies are usually your most anxious personality type because they're thinking of those details all the time. We've got phlegmatic, which is what you were referring to earlier on your team. So phlegmatic is also a detailed person, but they're very low key. They want peace in all situations. They are never going to be a leader. They are always a follower. They're good at executing. So if somebody tells them what to do, they can execute well, but they are very rarely going to come up with a plan on their own. They prefer for somebody else to tell them what to do, and they'll be happy to do it. They're low emotional output, so very calm. They often have a very flat affect, meaning they don't make a lot of facial expressions. You can't really tell what they're thinking or feeling when you look at them. It can be hard to kind of pull anything, any personality out of a phlegmatic, so very low key. That's your phlegmatic. And then the last one is your sanguine. Sanguine is the life of the party. They are your talkers, very expressive on their face, super energetic and positive and happy. They're very aware of how the other person is feeling in an interaction. So they're very low in logic, high in feeling. Very good connectors with patients. So the team members that you have that are just somehow the patients just love them. They always love them. Sanguines can win over a wall, is what I say. They talk to anybody, everybody, and happy to kind of just build relationships with people. Low on detail. So sanguines tend to be kind of all over the place. And I can speak lovingly about sanguine because my husband is one. And so they tend to be kind of all over the place. They can jump from one thought to another with relative ease. And the thoughts can be completely disconnected. So, but they're very good persons. They can connect well with others. So those are the 4 main personality types. do you want to mention your personality type?
Sure. And I do want to say as well, obviously there's so many different personality assessments out there.
Yeah.
So this is just one that
Yes.
we tend to use because it's easy, it's quick,
Yeah.
it's free. And I think also it's usually you've got your primary and your secondary.
Yes.
And so I think initially when I look at it, you're like, okay, so your sanguines are your bubbly but not smart. Your cholerics are your smart but rude. You've got your so like that to me is how I quickly tend to, and that's not true at all.
Right.
It's always you're balanced by a secondary, etc. So just wanted to throw that out there because if anybody's listening and hasn't looked at this before, they're like, oh no, I'm one of those. Yeah. No, it's and the point is we need all four of all of those, to make an office or a family or a relationship or whatever work. So what was the question? I'm telling you what I am.
Yeah, what's yours?
So I'm melancholy. Mm-hmm. And it's funny when you say that, you're like the uber detailed. And I'm like, no, I'm not really super detailed, but I am, I guess, relative to and what we're talking about. I do want to know before I step into something. I want an idea of what I'm stepping into and the pros and cons and etc. Yeah. And then my husband is a phlegmatic. Mm-hmm. And so, it's good that we've got I think my secondary is a sanguine, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
And so we've got I got my details. Let's go. And then you've got my husband who's just like real chill.
Yeah.
And so it, in our relationship, it's a great balance to have because we need some of both. Like if we had two of us sanguine detailed, we'd get nothing done in the household. Nothing. And so it's a good balance to have.
Yeah. And I am choleric and my second is melancholy. So I tend to be more of a taskless oriented person, very taskless oriented, but I am also very detail oriented. So I've got a task, but I want it done well. I don't just want to get the task done. I want to get it done with a certain level of detail. When we got together initially and looked at your team, we had, I think all but you and your office manager were phlegmatic.
Yes.
So, which struck me as really odd. You don't find that very often in a team. So I knew it when I was watching your team in action. I could just tell by how low output they were. They were very calm, very, very little facial expressions. And so I had a feeling that I was watching phlegmatics at work in your office. But then once we actually got around to testing, I was very surprised to find you and your office manager were similar personality types and everybody else was phlegmatic. And so as soon as you, as soon as I reflected back on our conversation where you're like, I just can't figure out what's going on. I just can't seem to get anybody just real, excited on the team. I'm like, oh gosh, you're never going to get this group excited. Like they're about as excited as they're ever going to be. And so I think it started registering for you that you had what I would call an imbalance on your team. I'm sure it was a very pleasant team to work with, and they were, sweet and peaceable and very low drama and all of that. So there's definitely a positive to that. But to have a team full of phlegmatics, you have nobody really pulling the team forward. You have a bunch of people that will receive orders but will not initiate their own objectives or task lists. And so it didn't surprise me at all that you were dissatisfied with your team. And thankfully it worked out where you had a couple of people spinning off your team for different reasons, and we were able to supplement different personality types.
Which scared me.
Yeah.
I was like, no, at least, yes, where they're kind of low tone and low, and I get frustrated that there's no cheerleader here. Yeah. But on the other hand, I was so scared of having a dramatic or a bossy person coming in and bossing me around. And so I was like, well, at least they they're respectful and they do whatever I ask them to do. And you were like, but then you're never going to get anywhere that you want to get. And that was eye-opening. That was really eye-opening. I had never analyzed my practice.
And it's not surprising. Once we found out your husband's personality type, it wasn't surprising to me that you hired people like the person you were married to, because you were comfortable. You knew that without knowing the word for it, you pegged their personality even without even testing them or really thinking about it. You just knew, I'm comfortable with this type of person. And so your gut was telling you that even without the knowledge of what you now have. And so you hired a team full of your husband. That should make him feel very loved.
Yes, bless him. Poor guy.
So we ended up we've got a very diverse personality subset on your team now. So your key people on your management team, first of all, you're melancholy sanguine. So you are driven by the details, but what's interesting is the reason that you're not an uber detail person is because your secondary is sanguine, which is not a detail person, very low details. So you're going to be more of a muted melancholy than a super strong melancholy. For example, a melancholy phlegmatic would be almost double detail and very slow, a slow processor of information. But you're melancholy sanguine, which means you definitely want things done right, but you also care about how people feel in that process. You're very aware of what's going on. You have like a pulse on what is the feeling in this room, and you can't look past that. So you're very aware of that, and that is a non-detailed personality type. So it kind of makes you more of a muted detail person, if that makes sense. So we have you that's melancholy sanguine. Your leadership team, we've got both of them are melancholy choleric.
I thought one of them was choleric first.
I can't.
She's choleric.
Is she?
Yeah.
And then melancholy second?
Yeah.
Okay, so choleric melancholy and then melancholy choleric.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising that they're on your leadership team because, number one, cholerics tend to rise to leadership positions naturally because they're the pushers. They like to get things done. They like things to be done well and quickly. The way I explain cholerics, it's a natural opposite to phlegmatics. Cholerics are very fast-paced, very quick. They're surprising at how quick they can get a task list done and done relatively well. Phlegmatics can also get it done, but it's going to take them 10 times as long as it took the choleric to get it done, just because they're more of a slow, steady, methodical worker. And so you've got two of your key people on your leadership team, a blend of both melancholy and choleric. So they've got that strong drive in them, but they also like to get things done well, which plays to you because that's a priority for you, is that you guys, your team is doing things and executing well, not just executing without the details. And so they're on your leadership team. Of course, I'm on your leadership team, also choleric melancholy, which is, interesting. So your leadership team is definitely weighted with that personality. But then when we kind of look down at the bottom part of, what kind of everybody that falls under that, you've got a unique blend. So we have been talking about this for some time on your assistant team. It's heavily sanguine. And we've noticed that for quite some time. It's been an area that makes me think back to when we had your team full of phlegmatics, is there's just things that we know we can't expect out of your assistant team because they're all sanguine driven. So you can kind of jump in and tell what are some of the downsides to having an assistant team full of sanguines, and then what are the plus sides to that?
So I'll start with the plus, because they're just amazing with the kids.
Yeah.
They're amazing with the parents. They can bond and turn a kid around like no other, and they can bond with these parents and build the relationships, which I love as a sanguine myself. Secondary, I love because I enjoy that as well in the office. But also from a liability standpoint, patients are more likely to be forgiving if they feel heard, if they feel like there's a relationship, if they feel like somebody really stopped and cared about their kid. And that's what all my sanguine RDAs do, is they let that kid feel like they are the only patient of the day, they are the star of the day. So I really love that about my sanguine team. The downside is, good luck trying to get a chart note done consistently and accurately and thorough, even with templates, even with the maximal amount of training we've ever done. Like, you name it, we've tried it. And there's only so much we're going to get there with that. So for me, it was more, am I going to keep beating my head up against a wall, or am I just going to accept that that's where their strengths lie and where their limits lie? And then maybe it is going to be me who's going to have to go in and cut my time with patient relationship development, let the assistant have more of that time, but then I'm using that same time to go back and get the chart note done.
Right.
Et cetera. And then in the details as well. You would think that the RDAs, one of them should be the one to handle the ordering of supplies and materials because they're the ones who are using it and watching it be used because they're back there. But in my particular team, I don't have anybody. I mean, I think they're sanguine, and then whatever's next is not, or they're very heavy sanguine.
They're very heavily sanguine. Yeah.
And so the details to track materials, and we need to reorder on this timeline, and I mean that's just asking too much of that. I mean, not that they can't do it, but that's going to take a lot more effort for them. Mm-hmm. So they even coined themselves like the Dories of the office from Finding Nemo. Like, they're like do 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 do, and they're happy to make friends and bond and whatever, and then one thought in and one thought out, and we're just gonna keep going and keep swimming and everything's good. And it's so it's very helpful in a lot of the tasks of the office, and then it's very not helpful and frustrating on the other. But as long as we're recognizing that and going, okay, mm-hmm. what are the things? And again, this goes back to my original comment, was like, the job needs to be done. We've got to reorder materials. We've got to sterilize. We've got to do all these things. Like, you cannot just sit and gab all day. So no, you're not the person to take this job. But so then my challenge now in looking at it is, or my perspective, if you will, what can you excel in? Mm-hmm. So you're going to excel in this, and then you're going to excel in that, and you're going to excel in that. Great. So it's not like, because I did initially, when the office was smaller and we didn't have so many moving parts, I remember having an assistant that she was good with all of that. Again, another sanguine, mm-hmm. But not detail oriented. And she got mad at me one time. She actually blew up in the office at me one time because I was going to be gone for, I don't know, a week out of the office. And I was like, well, how can I supplement her hours then?
Right.
Because she's really great with chairside, but I'm not here chairside. Yeah. So what am I giving her to do? Well, I can't ask her to schedule appointments because we've had her do that before and she completely botches those up. I can't have her do treatment plans because she doesn't understand them. I can't have her. And so really the task list came down to, okay, well, let's do a deep cleaning of the office here and let's organize this and do that. And she didn't like that. And so it really, was one of those things again where I was like, well, I'm trying to help you. I could tell you to be off for the week.
Right.
I'm killing myself trying to come up with tasks here to justify paying you. And you just stood there and screamed at me for 20 minutes about how you're not the servant of the office and you're not the maid and all of that. So it was just another one of those moments that was like, okay, I screwed this up. Was it in my presentation of, right. and honestly, in the early days, it could have been my presentation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past myself to say something like, well, I can't put you in anything else because you've not done it accurately. So, which of course I would never say that now, but I'm sure I said, if you
something
go back to the
sugar
coating episode, I can't remember what podcast episode we've talked about, but I talked about how I was not going to be a sugar coater and I was going to lay it direct because I thought I was helping people with not giving them false hope, which
for a sanguine, especially, that's soul crushing for them. Because they want to be liked and appreciated by the people that they work for sure, but by everybody, to be perfectly honest. So in your very, let me just lay it out here real straight, factual, I'm not going to fluff this up. For a sanguine, that was probably very hard for her to hear because she needs to feel like you like her and you appreciate her and all of that.
And I didn't think I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
I really just thought, okay, so, you've tried the scheduling and I know that was challenging for you and you've said you're not good at these types of tasks. So of course we're not going to put that with you. So really you're great at chairside. I don't have chairside for you. So then we're going to spring clean. And I don't know what I said or what my tone was or my facial expression. I don't remember. It was so long ago, but that incident has stuck out because she was a very quiet, agreeable person, and she just
It just lit her up.
Hyde came out, or Jekyll, or whichever one it is. Like, I mean, it just was like this total, like, I don't know who you are right now. You know, and she's like, you're one of the rudest dentists I've ever worked for.
Oh, no.
And, you know, it was, you know, and thinking back on it, she probably was right, and I didn't even recognize it. Anyway, all of that to say, there are things that if you look around the office that you're kind of going, okay, what would this person do really well at? Now, some of my sanguines, they've come up with some of the cutest ideas in the office. Hey, on our surgery days, we should XYZ. That's brilliant. Yeah. So, trying to figure out where their strengths are going to help in the office is kind of the point of the podcast, and the personalities, I think.
Yeah,
right?
And allowing them to shine in that. And I think it comes back to, and we've referenced this in many podcasts, but just tempering our expectation to go, you know, from a genetic makeup for whatever reason, you know, this personality type is not good with those details. And so when you do have an assistant team full of sanguines, there's so many positives to that we get the benefit of, but there are also downsides, and it's unfair to expect a sanguine who's so great at connecting with parents and patients and making everything just happy rainbows, all of that, to also be the same person that can drive into the minutia of a perfect order and ordering exactly what you need every time. That's going to be very hard for them. It's not that it's impossible. It just means it's hard for them, and we need to extend grace to them in that scenario, and or come up with an alternative plan, which is what we've done on your team, and it's worked out beautifully. I mean, we simply offloaded a good portion of that ordering to somebody else who could handle it with the level of detail that it needed to be handled with. And so making accommodations for that personality type and extending grace instead of just going, why can't they get this order right? Taking a moment to go, but look at all the things that they do well. And we're going to focus on that and figure out what to do about the things that they don't do well. So we've got your sanguine assistants. We have got, I want to talk on the associates as well, because we talked about personalities quite a bit with all of your associates as we've kind of moved them on. And you've got one that will eventually be moving on, and he's a very different personality type to the one that you kind of brought in to supplement his hours when he moves on. And we talked a lot about personality in this particular scenario. So talk with me about...
So my one associate who's been with me for 5 years, and I've known that he's going to start his own from the day he walked in the door. He's from a small town, and he wants to be the doc in that small town, and he knows everybody, etc. So I've known this was coming, and it's interesting to see how the two of us get along and balance each other. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, he will be the one a lot of times to make the decisions or to guide this or suggest that. And I'm happy to go along with it if I can trust that that person is saying something that makes sense and that they've looked at it from multiple angles and etc. And so we balance each other very well in that. And there are other times where I'm like, no, we really can't do that. I need you to stop a minute and I need you to think about these details, because he's very sanguine. Sanguine's mm-hmm. his first. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, is Choleric his second? Mm-hmm. And so, and apparently somebody somewhere told me that not many dentists are sanguine.
Very few.
Right.
It's rare because the dental profession is so, sanguines are really filled up by people liking them and enjoying them. And so for a dentist to be a sanguine is hard because very few people really just love going to the dentist. And so it's hard for a sanguine dentist because very few people, unfortunately, like going to the dentist. So, yes.
What do you mean?
I know.
They
What's
love
wrong
me.
with these
Who wouldn't?
people?
Who wouldn't love us? We're a great breed. Anti-dentites. So, okay. So, so he's a sanguine, and so he loves the social and the patience and the this and the that, and he's very bubbly, and, you know, so he can take charge, and I let him take charge because mm-hmm. he has proven that his thought process is there. He's not flaky, and he does have all the details there because with the Choleric being mm-hmm. a good second for him. So it's funny now when he is getting closer to stepping out, and then you and I had that whole conversation about what am I doing and what's my why and do we want to bring on another associate and do I not? And I mean, that was such a saga, right?
Yeah.
And initially I thought that I wanted to replace you know, Dr. A with another doctor very similar to him.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy him, and I love that I can not be there and not stress about it because I know I've got somebody who's going to handle everything the right way. So I was like, okay, I need somebody else who's kind of sanguine-ish, kind of choleric-ish, and kind of balance me well and replace him. And so as I kind of saw and talked with, you know, prospective associates, and one in particular, you know, who came by, and I was like, he reminds me a lot of my current doctor. And the more I thought about it, the more anxious I got, because it occurred to me that this guy was going to come in and I want this and I want this and I want to do that and I want to do that and I want this and I want this. And I think I'm in a different place now than 5 years ago when Dr. A started with me. And his name's not Dr. A, by the way. I just XYZ, whatever, right? So anyway, so when he started with me, I was in a very different place. I didn't have the management team in place that I had. You and I had just started working together, you know, maybe the year before. And so it was just, I'm in a different place now, that all the things that he brings to the practice and to me that I was grateful for, I don't really need that anymore.
Right.
And so that was interesting for me to discover that, that now this new person that we were looking at, and I was like, ooh, I think he's very similar. I think we found our guy. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, because he's going to want this done this way, that done that way, that done that way. And I already have a management team in place now that now this is how we make our decisions and this is how we do things. And this guy's not going to be happy because 5 years ago, I was willing to go, okay, whatever. And I'm not in that place anymore. The practice isn't in that place anymore. And so to have this guy come in, I was like, he's actually going to be quite a cog in the wheel because he's going to think we're not listening to him and he's not able to integrate his authority and he's the new young guy. And so therefore we're not taking him seriously. And that's not it at all. But our needs are different now.
You had a good system in place, and you didn't necessarily need a strong opinion to sway things. And he was going to come with those strong opinions and without the relationship. So with Dr. A, your associate, you'd had 5 years of a relationship, and 5 years ago you were able to build his preferences into your existing system. And now you insert potentially a new doctor with those same expectations, but in a practice that's much more mature, much more established. It most likely wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah, for either one of us.
Right.
He would have been highly dissatisfied. I would have been pulling my hair out, trying to make somebody happy, and then at the sacrifice of my team and myself.
Yeah.
And so then we've got the doc we ended up hiring, and he's the opposite of myself and of Dr. A. He's exactly opposite. And I was like, this could either be a very good thing or a very bad thing. Good thing he's phlegmatic.
Yep.
And he's go with the flow. And I was like, I've done this before. I know why I'm hiring a phlegmatic because I used to do that, right? He's going to be very much like, yes, whatever. Never asked what he was going to get paid. Never made a fuss about, I was like, I like this guy. He's just going to. And then I stopped and I went, oh gosh, this guy's really going to get on my nerves because I'm going to expect him to want to help make some decisions in should we do this or should we do this or should we handle this way or this way. And he's probably going to get on my nerves. I think I said, I think he's going to be happy because he's kind of laid back and we're all going to tell him what to do. The assistants are going to tell him what to do and he's going to be happy with that. And they're going to be happy with that because nobody's pushing back. The parents are going to love him because he's going to just be like, okay, we'll try this. And very much a peacekeeper and very likable guy and just really laid back. I said, the only one you're going to irritate is me.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to add this and add that. And then I stopped and I went, but I don't need all those things added.
Exactly.
We've already got a management team in place. And in fact, I probably want the guy who's just going to go along with it.
Right.
So he's been with us now for a couple of months and I love him. He is precious and he's just a delight to work with. And yes, I'm waiting for that other shoe to fall because I'm always waiting for that. You said Melancholy is your most anxious person. Well, there you go. I'm always waiting for that shoe to drop. But it hasn't dropped yet. And I just think he's precious. And it's like we predicted. The staff is loving him. The patients are loving him. He seems to be happy, although I'll never know because he's phlegmatic. So I don't know. But no news is good news. I don't know.
Well, good news is if he gets unhappy, it takes phlegmatics a long time to get there. So you're a couple months in, you're fine. Okay. You're fine for a while. He won't complain for another year.
Okay. Excellent.
You got time. But no, it's a very good example of how personalities informed us in our decision. And I think there were other factors that certainly came into place, but that was a strong one that we really considered between these two that we were looking at. And when we evaluated, because I think we were almost both knee-jerk, like, oh no, we don't want to go back down the phlegmatic path. But the more we talked about it, we're like, it's established, and what we need is somebody that's going to easily fit in with this team that's more or less a well-oiled machine. We don't need somebody kind of coming in and trying to create change into something that's already working. And he's done just exactly what we thought he would do. And that is a decision that was greatly informed by personalities. So personalities, yes, fit your team and our expectations of the team, but it can even be applicable in the associate search or in a dentist that you're choosing to work with or not. So maybe we've got listeners that aren't practice owners. I think personality should be something that's considered before somebody decides to go work for a certain personality type, because it doesn't mean that we can't work for a similar personality type that can work well. I think we have to be careful of our opposite personality type and just expectations. Because if I go and work for a sanguine who is super involved about how the patients feel and how the parents feel and all of this, and I'm a phlegmatic, I may not be able to execute the appointment in the way that he or she wants me to execute the appointment. And that's not necessarily an expectation that would be spoken in the interview process of, oh, hey, Dr. Phlegmatic, I want to make sure that you're very talkative in the appointments. What employer says that? That's not going to come across. But if you pick up on the fact that they're a very gregarious personality and super extroverted and seem to be very talkative, it should just be a check in your mind that goes, I might want to get in there and observe how he or she conducts the appointments, because my guess is they're going to want me to conduct appointments in a similar way. And can I execute that or not based on my personality type? So to know our own personality type, I think, is critically important, but then being able to, even from an associate standpoint, choose employers very carefully, allowing personalities to inform us.
So then the question I have for you is, okay, well, these are the only two practices that are hiring. Mm-hmm. And that one didn't call me back for an interview, and now this is the only one. So what do you mean? It doesn't really matter what my personality is and what boss's personality is. That's the job, and that's the job I've got to take. So
that's where we have to, make a decision. We can flex our personality, right? So we talk about this a lot with you, that truly you are an introvert. You don't mind being home. You are totally fine with the non-social events, but you stretch your sanguine muscle pretty far at work, which is why you can come home exhausted from a day of kind of dancing. You call it tap dancing for your patients and for your parents, because you're really harnessing the sanguine side of you. So a doctor's personality, they may have sanguine as number 4. It doesn't mean it's non-existent. It's there. It just may be their lowest quality, and we can flex that personality muscle as far as we need to. So this is one of those situations that, let's say this is the only office I've got that's offering me a job. We may have to, it's called emotional labor. It means that we are harnessing a part of our personality that we don't use on a regular basis. And is that going to be exhausting? Absolutely. But can we do it? Yes, we can, but we need to be very mindful of the fact that I'm not going to just naturally go in, be my normal self, the way I was designed to be, and be successful in this practice. I'm going to have to be a little bit of a unique person here, and it may not be the exact person I am at home, but I'm going to have to flex different muscles at this office. So we have the ability to do that.
So, and that's where I would say that's one part of it, and the other part of it is just that way. At least if you know and you've thought about going, okay, yeah, this is my only job opportunity, so I've got to take it. but what strategies can I use to make myself more successful and more happy? Because I don't want to be miserable and I got to flex this muscle that I'm not used to flexing. But if it's a communication thing, could I communicate differently? Could I see that the boss is this way? So I want to make sure, if the boss is a super sanguine and I'm not, well, how do I make sure? Because the boss is constantly going to be looking for me to make sure I'm happy. And if I'm more laid back, then maybe I need to take a minute to stop and make sure that I'm giving the boss what they need.
The feedback, yep.
And funny enough, that happened with this new doc and Doc A that we've been calling him. Doc A did this seminar, and I got new doc into the seminar for free.
Yeah.
And this is something that most doctors pay $3,000-$4,000 to listen to this. And I got him there and I made it happen and all of that. Well, at the end of it, I was talking with Doc A and I said, hey, great job, buddy. And it was a great seminar and and what do you think? And he was like, well, the new doc didn't say anything. Didn't say anything at all. And so it was funny to me because I was like, he's thoroughly offended because he just gave the performance of his life and did this amazing seminar. And new doc barely said thank you and left. And it was viewed as almost insulting.
Right.
And disrespectful in a way that how could you get this thing for free?
Yeah.
And you barely uttered I don't even know that he uttered thank you. He just left.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see then, so I could see both sides of it, from Phlegmatic, Mr. Phlegmatic himself. He's like, well, what did I do wrong? It wasn't offensive at all. What am I supposed to do? Buy you flowers? Get on my knees, grovel, and say thank you? What am I supposed to do to express my gratitude? Yeah. I am appreciative. But I can totally see it from Dr. Sanguine's side going, he really was kind of waiting for this guy to bring him something.
Right. I
really do. I think it would not have been odd for him to, if Phlegmatic had brought in something, a handwritten card or a box of cookies or something to say, thank you so much for getting me into this seminar. And I can't believe I didn't have to pay for it. And I got to be here and participate. I'm so appreciative for that. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was just sanguine, dude. Phlegmatic's that's not even going to occur to him.
Mm-mm. But to recognize that, for Phlegmatic to recognize that in himself and to know, I'm not easily read. Externally, I don't give out a lot. So what does a Phlegmatic need to do in a situation like that? I'm going to have to harness the power of words. I may not show it in my face or my body that I'm just so appreciative of this opportunity that Dr. Sanguine gave me, but I know that it's a great opportunity. I can guarantee you he knew that. He knew the facts of it. He just did not articulate that well. So for a Phlegmatic, words are not the first thing they go to. Physical expression is not what they go to. They're very within themselves, processing all of these things internally. And so Dr. Phlegmatic needs to recognize, hey, and we actually have talked to him about this kind of in the interview process, that this is a weakness of yours and your personality disposition. So you're going to have to compensate for that with words, which would have helped in this situation with Dr. Sanguine.
I mean, to the point where I messaged him, I said, hey, cut and paste this. Thank you so much for having me today. This was a great course.
Yeah.
I had to feed it to you, but I knew Dr. Sanguine was really going to kind of hold that in the back of his mind. Mm-hmm. And for me going, oh my goodness, these two are going to have to work together in my practice. And Sanguine's never going to treat Phlegmatic bad, but I know he's always going to have that kind of chip on his shoulder a little bit going, I can't believe this was given to you on a platter. And, then that whole thing of I've had to work so hard to do this and I've had to work so hard to get that and I've had to work so hard to get this and this was handed to you on a platter and you just took it and left your dirty napkin sitting on the chair. You know what I mean? He didn't clean it up. Phlegmatic he should have been more pulled it together and flex that muscle, find it in you, brother, get it out there and be like, thank you so much for having me today. It was a great course. That's all you really needed to say and express, and nothing about you expressed that. And it was hard for me to watch because I know you're grateful, like you said, but you didn't show it whatsoever. Exactly. And so for me to kind of say, hey, you're not just dealing with me, although I would have appreciated a thank you as well. I mean, I jumped through hoops to make this happen for you, but I'm not the ultimate sanguine that needs that feedback But you know what, dude? You're dealing with Mr. Sanguine. So if I was you, I would try to do something to let this guy know that you appreciated.
Right. And to me, that's such a practical application that even as, listeners are listening to this, the recognition of your own personality and your own weaknesses, and there has to be some compensation. We can't just go, you know what, I'm a sanguine and details aren't my thing, so you're never going to get details from me. No, it means we dig deep and we exercise that when we have to. Just like words for Dr. Phlegmatic are not going to be his natural go-to, but he's going to have to flex that periodically, especially for a sanguine who's seeking that affirmation or wants to know that they're appreciated as a person. We're going to have to use more words, which is really important even as we think about managing the team. When we know the personalities that we have in place, we know that are cholerics on your leadership team. You can shoot it straight with both of them. Just cut to the chase. These are the facts. This is what I need. And they're going to go, okay. The feelings aren't going to be involved as much as a sanguine's might be. Whereas if you were to kind of communicate in the same way to your assistant team all of the time, which is built on sanguines, they're going to be crushed constantly because they need a lot of, the sandwiching of the positive, and then let's insert the little piece of, critique here. So you can even adjust, you have the freedom with your management team because of that choleric melancholy blend to be able to shoot it real straight. You don't have to do a lot of building up of those two. And then the sanguines, your assistant team, you're adjusting your communication style to kind of fit them in a very different way.
And it's funny, even the cholerics that don't like it when I do. If I approach them with, they're like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like, what is your point? Like, they don't even want the extra fluff, They're like, what is wrong with you? Like, just out with it. Like, we got things to do here. Spit it out. Let's move on and let's address it. Right? And then you've got my sanguines that it's like, I can't do that. So it's like, hey, this appointment went really well up until this point. Okay, so I know that this didn't go so well right here. What do y'all think it was? Like, is it just me? Okay, you too felt that this? Okay, good. So what are we going to do about that next time, right? But if I approach my choleric team, they'd be like, I'm going to punch you in the face. Tell me what went wrong. Well, what went wrong was you didn't get the consent and you didn't talk to mom about this, and then the estimate was wrong. That's what was wrong in the appointment. Okay, yeah, you're right. All right, well, next time I'll fix that. But I can't do that with my sanguine team. It's going to be over their head. Feelings are going to be hurt, and they're never going to get the point. It's not like they're going to go, oh, wait, maybe I should have gotten that in the end. We've all got to discuss and talk, and this is what went well, but oh my gosh, we didn't get that consent though, did we? Oh gosh, yeah, we got to get that next time. Okay, so how are we going to remember to get that next time, ladies? Okay, you got your back, but you know what? That kid sure left happy. High five. Who remembered he liked that purple popsicle? That was you. Good job, girl. So it's just funny how, like, that, I just had to tailor it two different ways.
Yes.
And so for the people that are going, I don't have that kind of energy, you adapt to me. Good luck. Because I played that too, where I was like, I'm not flipping for anybody. You adapt around me. Didn't get me very far, and especially in this market, it's certainly not going to. So,
yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah,
failed. Recircled the wagons. Here's the new plan, and I will say that it has worked very well. And yes, it's a little bit more laboring on your part, but I think there's also a lot more fulfillment and joy that you have in your team now because you've kind of understood the personality constraints and positives that they have, and you've been able to kind of adapt to those. And I think when we know enough about our employees, we're able to really take joy in what they're really good in and be aware and be constantly coaching on the things that they're not too good in.
And honestly, I would say if that's not your strength and you are like, no, I'm never going to get there, then that's when you hire you a Bethany. Now I say hire a Bethany, don't take my Bethany. Yeah. I keep telling you, you don't need more clients because I don't want your time gone. But then
get an outside resource.
Get an outside resource if it's not your strength. Yeah. But it is what it is. We've got to be able to adapt and speak to the people we have in our office.
Exactly. Yes. I love it. We love personalities. We could talk on this for 3 more hours, right?
Yep.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.